Okay, shalom. We are back. So this is First Century Torah Talk, and we've got quite a bit of wonderful subjects to cover. We've transitioned to doing these recordings and taking our time through the scriptures and allowing for the Father to lead us into this new season. These are Torah-based discussions. We will cover portions, and a lot of this has to do with the Israelites preparing to leave Egypt. Then they are obviously with the Passover, and then leaving Egypt, having provision, and then receiving the Ten Commandments. And so I wanted to introduce our family here. And so we've got all the way in Georgia, Zafania Pappas. We have Brian Sanchez here in Texas, and Ephraim Ramona Frank in Israel. So welcome, everyone. Or Ephraim Ramona, we'll start with you because I believe, as we were talking offline here, we were getting into some subjects that really resonated with me as far as the Father's perspective in a lot of this. And I want to, yield our time to really spend some time with that, because I think it's a very important thing to focus on, kind of what the perspective the Father has shown you about this.
Well, just in looking at the first word "bo," the Torah portion, but actually it says "go to," but it's not "go to." It's actually "come." And when you think of the Almighty, He's everywhere, all at one time, in one place. And I think what He's saying to Moshe is, "I want you to come to me because I'm with Pharaoh right now." So to speak, I'm dialoguing with Pharaoh and dealing with Pharaoh, and so he's basically saying, "Bo, come to me where I'm at right now because I'm dealing with Pharaoh. So why don't you come over and we'll have a conversation, with Pharaoh." And this is it's really, again, coming back to the sovereignty of the Almighty and the way He operates through all these episodes that we've been seeing in the lives of our the forefathers, and then down into Joseph's life. And it's all about who He is. And it's an amazing journey if we look at it from His perspective. Come into His presence, so to speak, His presence, and learn, from these stories, because He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He doesn't change. His methods don't change. Right. And so it's our discovery of who this Elohim is, who God is. And I know it's probably the biggest theological discussion in any seminary that you want to go to is, who is God? What does it mean to be God?
And for us to relate to Him.
And to relate to someone that got all these big names like omnipotence and omnipresence and all these beautiful theological words for who He really wants to be, and that is our Father.
I was also trying to have somewhat of an overview of all these episodes, and again, I was seeing that it is about Him revealing Himself in a number of ways, revealing Himself way over and above all these deities of Egypt. Mm-hmm. So there was definite spiritual warfare in this entire story. Then there is the extraction of the firstborn, who have no awareness or idea who they are. Actually, it's not like some group of people that has been taken captive, and they realize that there's the Elohim, the Father, out there, and that He's made covenants with their forefathers, and who He's calling them to be. They have no idea. So He's trying to extract them from the hand. He is extracting them from the hand of the enemy on the one hand, but on the other, and revealing Himself to the enemy in one way, and in another way, revealing Himself to them, and revealing Himself through who He is, the present presence, but also revealing Himself as the historical being who has made those covenants with the forefathers, and how they knew, how the forefathers knew him, and how they're supposed to know him. And from there on, once he does that, he brings them to all kinds of places where they're being challenged. After he challenges the deities of the Gentiles, let me put it this way, then he challenges his own people. And of course, then comes the great, incredible time of where he meets them, in the mountain, and goes through the betrothal act with them, and all that entails. So these are just a few points. And there's also, we'll come to the very interesting point about extracting them from the hand of the enemy. Has a certain aspect of it which usually doesn't come out, and that is the legal aspect. Because why does he always say that? Why does he always demand that Pharaoh lets go of them? He doesn't need Pharaoh to let go of them. He can just do whatever he wants. But there is a legal point there, and we'll get to it. So this is just a few thoughts on the matter.
Yes, absolutely. That's fantastic. Yeah, let's get Zephaniah and Brian's thoughts on this, because I think that's good to kind of give an overview, and then we can kind of explore some of the perspectives, because there's I think a deeper, enriching discussion about the legalities. That is a very powerful idea. I recall, both of you talk at length about the judicial aspects of the redemption, and what Yeshua did on the execution stake was something judicial. It hasn't really been presented to us. You're absolutely right. Not only in the traditional, Western church, or modern church rather, and then even more so now in the Torah movement, we don't really hear about the judicial aspects of how redemption is started, where it came from, the origins of it, and where we're at with it now. And it's also like it goes back also to a lot of how I grew up, and then now with the understanding, and at least the practice of spiritual warfare. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. It's essentially, we've got people who consider themselves prayer warriors, or people who are in that, yet perhaps there's an issue of literacy and understanding of the legal aspects of how this actually is structured, and it takes its toll on people who end up trying to go up against the principalities and powers and rulers and all these things, and their prayer, and they're interceding, and they're seeing so many different results, and they're having a huge struggle just simply because they need to know how things are wired, how things are structured. And I'm grateful that we can start kind of turning the light on some of these things, especially for those who are listening, who consider themselves, into spiritual warfare, and they're into intercessory prayer and things of that nature. Well, here's where it starts. This is kind of your entry point. How do we get away from the grip of the enemy? So, Zephaniah, I'll start with you. A lot of these subjects come up at Beyond the Mountain. We talked a lot at length about this. This is an ongoing thing. It's an entire subject unto itself, and we're just scratching the surface on this. What do you think about that?
Yes, I'm thinking of, if we're looking at, and one of the plagues I was thinking about is a darkness that is felt, which is very interesting. And if you look at the face of evil, it is darkness that's felt, really, in a sense. That type of darkness, it is felt. And so you kind of see something that's happening here is both the natural and the spiritual that's taking place here at the same time. And where there was actually a physical darkness that was felt, where they couldn't see anything, they didn't penetrate at all into the homes of the Egyptians. Yet in the Goshen, it was a different story. And I think that when he's making those distinctions on those plagues that are not affecting the Israelites, that's a whole interesting aspect too. when it comes to our understanding of who we are in Him, that these things, these curses, if we know our standing in Him, will not have the effect on us as they do on the rest of the world.
Wow, it's powerful, Zephaniah. I think a lot of what we are experiencing in that, just again the warfare. It's a subject that we're still trying to find our verbiage, our literacy. We're trying to find how things are pieced together, and so I think that a lot of us, even in our modern day, with Brian, I wanted to get your thoughts as well. Is that you're looking at these Torah portions, looking at the Exodus story. How many times have we just been, told this in a very, very short, condensed way? But what happens when you actually stop and look at this and digest it and unpack it and really allow the Father to show you spiritually what this all means? What do you think about that now that you're looking at this from a new perspective?
Growing up in the traditional church, if this is ever discussed during the springtime, it's very, very quick. It's very minor. It's just the standard Exodus story, talking about the power of El Shaddai, mighty God, and that's it. And then we go right into the holiday, the Western culture holiday. You know what holiday that is. So it's just spoken of briefly. That's why I like hearing these insights, these other tidbits of insights that Ephraim and Ramona will point out, like what Ramona pointed out earlier about he didn't have to go to Pharaoh. It's things like that, and the one that we touched on the judicial. I mean, those things I would have never, plucked out. So that's why I'm grateful to be here on these, because again, I'm going only on my I started Torah in 2019, so I'm still new. So it's these things that are I'm learning. But like Zephaniah was talking about, how I apply the plagues to the current situation in the world, especially here in America. What we've been going through is, are the ancient Israelites. They come out of this bondage, and they go into the wilderness and things are looking great, and then they get complacent. So these are lessons for us to take here in America, and not to get complacent, because we every time something big happens or something major happens, and it's like, oh my God, the sky's falling. There'll be a little period of, well, there's a few days or a few weeks of the so-called the evangelical preachers here in America will talk about revival, but it goes away after a while. So when things get back to normal, it goes away. Everybody gets complacent again, and everybody forgets about the Father. So that's how I look at how these plagues. They're great. They're praising Yehovah on the way out. They're headed to the promised land, but like us Americans, they start complaining. More food, more water. This is not ideal, and when are we going to get there? And it's same situation. That's how I look at this particular, or these several parashahs actually coming up.
No, I think you're right about, as far as background in Christianity, it's very individualistic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saved by the blood of Yeshua.
Oh, that's
and,
it. Yeah.
My life it's all about me. It's basically about ourselves being saved out of something and into possibly in the church and whatever that means to the particular denomination. But when you see this, you hear Yahweh saying over and over again, my people. Then not my peoples, plural, but my people. In other words, he is looking at an entire nation as one entity. And a lot of times we lose this perspective, but this draws us back to yes, there's Moshe and Aaron, individuals involved, like it is with Yeshua, an individual Redeemer, Messiah. But the purpose of the Redeemer, the Messiah, the real purpose that's on the heart of the Father is my people.
Mm-hmm.
My people, in this case, it would say, like in verse 3 of chapter 10, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said to him, "Thus says Yehovah, Elohim of the Hebrews." In Egypt, they weren't called Israel; they were called the Hebrews, the Hebrew slaves. And it wasn't until really after they crossed over or crossed through the Red Sea and got to the other side that he pronounced them, Israel, my firstborn nation. They were recognized only after the redemption as a nation, because in slavery, you really are an individual slave. You can't, it's hard to find community in slavery. And so this is a very important part of being set free, is it brings you back together in a wholeness and a completeness as a community. And so identity becomes really very, very important. And and I think this is why he says over and over to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." In that sense, is the Father desires to have a body that's not dysfunctional, but it's whole and it's complete. You see this all through the apostolic writings as well, where it talks about the fivefold ministry and what that means. We come out of it whole, complete, one, not divided. So this I really see very strongly in the Exodus, is the importance of our unity, our oneness as a nation.
Yeah.
It's like it says in Ephesians 4, one baptism, one spirit, one it uses, but I think we've lost the concept of one. What does it mean to be one?
Yes, in regards to the legal aspect. So we're talking about one, and we're talking about, let's just say it, we're talking about the people of Israel as being the betrothed, the bride of Elohim. But here comes something that in the Hebrew is revealed, and I'm talking specifically, and it's in one specific verse, a part of a verse, and that's in chapter 11 and part of verse 1, where it says in the middle of the verse, "Afterward he, Pharaoh, will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will surely drive you out of here altogether." Well, that portion there can be read in Hebrew very, very clearly. He will send you off from here as the sending off of a bride. This is how he will divorce you from here. And if we look at, there's in Joshua, in Ezekiel, perhaps in other places too, there are clear references to the Israelites succumbing to the idolatry of Egypt, which means that legally they married themselves off to the Egyptians. And because Pharaoh was himself a deity, they were married to Pharaoh. And so this explains why Yehovah insists that Pharaoh lets them go, in a way divorces them. And it's interesting that in chapter 11, verse 2, they are extracting from the Egyptians all these goods, all these different articles, and kind of you ask yourself, is this a dowry that they're retrieving, they're taking back? But this legal aspect here shows us where they were at and where Yehovah needed them to be. And so when Pharaoh lets them go, now they become free to marry Yehovah. And the other thing about Pharaoh, he's very much a picture of Satan himself in his deceptive ways. So many times he really tries to be very cunning. And so many times, he will say, well, I will let you go, but maybe not for 3 days, or maybe not the children, or maybe don't take with you the animals. And he tries to get around the demands that Moses and Aaron are making, even comes to the point of repenting. Oh, it's me and my people who are evil, and he's supposedly repenting. So we really see the traits of Satan very much active in Pharaoh. So if we take it to ourselves, if we apply it to the present day, or if we apply it to the body of Messiah at large, we really see the big divide, the big divorce, that yes, Elohim divorced Israel, but in order for us to turn back to him, we have to be divorced from the enemy, from Satan, and from his cunning and subtle ways that are not only external to us, but also that have worked their ways into us, into our emotions, into our minds, into our behavior, into our words, to be free to marry Elohim, to marry Yehovah.